Hezbollah and Lebanon are still bracing for an Israeli retaliation after murdering 12 children in Majdal Shams. Jerusalem is said to be weighing its options carefully as the United States and other countries are applying immense pressure on Israel to refrain from a major strike. With tensions running high and speculations running wild, what is Israel waiting for? Joining us now to discuss all this and more, Senior Vice President of Research at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Jonathan Schanzer. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Israel is once again slow playing a retaliation. I mean, it could take out Hezbollah weapons depots or other major targets, but it's holding off. What is it waiting for?
Well, first of all, I think we're seeing significant pressure from the United States and perhaps from other Western powers. The U.S. is fearful of a significant escalation in the Middle East. I think we already see a war. It already is underway between Israel and Hezbollah. But I think the U.S. understands it full well. They're not wrong to note that this could be a significant escalation. It could drag the entire region into war. And so the U.S. is warning against that, trying to caution the Israelis to move deliberately, perhaps slowly, perhaps surgically, in order to prevent a wider conflagration. The other thing that we're hearing is that there is an effort to get diplomats and Westerners out of Lebanon. The Israelis have warned all major airlines not to service the Beirut airport through the end of the week. So the Israelis have given themselves ample time to prepare for this attack, and they're doing so in the time and place of their choosing.
You know, it seems that every time Israel is attacked, it's told by the United States or other countries to refrain, to hold back. As we saw, for example, with the Islamic Republic of Iran, Israel conducted a very limited and very minor retaliation, more to send a message, after Iran launched over 200 missiles and drones at Israeli cities. I mean, how do you explain this? And is this the right course of action for Israel with regards to Lebanon?
Well, I mean, I think first we should just unpack the U.S. policy, and that has been to restrain its friends and allies and to embolden its adversaries and enemies. That has been the case from the beginning of this war. We continue to see an upside-down American policy where we're calling for Israeli restraint in the face of overwhelming violence from Iran-backed proxies or Iran itself. And that is not the way to deter the Islamic Republic. My assessment is that every time you see these messages coming out of Washington, that it has the reverse effect. In other words, if what we're trying to do here in D.C. is to prevent a wider war, every time we restrain the Israelis and give a green light to Iran or its proxies to fire on Israel, this only adds to the escalation. What's needed right now is a significant Israeli response backed by the United States, so that Iran and its proxies understand that there is a price to pay for what they've been doing around the region. So I think we've got a very dangerous situation right now where the U.S. appears to be trying to prevent a war, but actually may be stoking a wider one.
And if and when Israel chooses to retaliate, I mean, what will its objectives be? What would it hope to gain from this retaliation?
Well, I think there are a couple of things here that the Israelis have to be thinking about. The first is precision-guided munitions. We understand that there are about 1,500 of these special munitions in the possession of Hezbollah. These weapons would give Hezbollah the ability to attack very specific targets with great accuracy, and they are very dangerous to Israel. These are the sorts of things that could potentially target Israeli water or electrical systems. They could target the chemical plant in Haifa or the nuclear facility in Dimona or skyscrapers in Tel Aviv. In other words, Israel needs to get rid of these, and they need to get rid of them quickly. So, I think they have held off up until now. If they have information about these PGMs and can target them accurately, I suspect that will be part of the effort. There is also, I think, the question of decapitation. Are there significant leaders that Israel can take out with pinpoint intelligence that would enable the Israelis, after maybe just a handful of strikes, to be able to say, we've made our point and we don't need to escalate any further? I think those are the sorts of things that Israel's thinking about. But then we have to just remember that there are installations of weapons, rockets, drones scattered across Lebanon. And these are the weapons that have been used to fire at Israelis for the last 9 months. Israel may be thinking about a much wider set of targets to prevent these kinds of attacks from continuing so deep into this conflict already.
And, I want to turn to Gaza as well. It's been nearly 10 months of war now. The IDF also initially waited for quite some time, a few weeks before launching its offensive in Gaza. I mean, looking back now, do you think this was the right course of action to wait, to take its time, as we're seeing in Lebanon? And what can we learn from Gaza that Israel can now apply to Hezbollah?
Well, I think there are a couple of lessons. One is, and this is interesting, but in the beginning, Israel didn't even want to attack Gaza. As furious as Israelis were and outraged as they were about the 10/7 attacks, the Israeli government was actually thinking about going north first. And it was the Biden administration that convinced the Israeli government to instead focus on Gaza. And then, months later, we began to hear from the Biden administration, from the international community, that whatever Israel was doing in Gaza was too much anyway. And they have advised, for moderation or for holding back. And I think Israel has found itself in an impossible position where it finds that it can't win in Gaza under the sort of normal rules of engagement. The U.S. has been, forcing Israel to fight with one hand tied behind its back, whether because of Ramadan or because of fears about a humanitarian crisis. Whatever it is, Israel has found itself unable to do the work that it needs to do to finish the war. I think Israel needs to learn something here, that they need to stick with the battle plan that they have. They need to not pause. They need to push forward, get the win under their belt, get those objectives done, and then hopefully move on to the next, because there are, of course, other proxies of Iran that are lying in wait.
All right. Well, Jonathan Schanzer, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thanks for having me.